Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you are interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. Just one last thing before we go into the podcast. I just wanted to talk to you about the fact that I have a YouTube channel that has been going for quite some time, and I am recording and releasing all of my interviews with some short videos as well on YouTube. So please do check it out. YouTube on Absolute Business Mindset. You'll see a bunch of interviews there, all the longer format interviews and some short videos as well. So please enjoy that. And here goes with the podcast interview. This podcast will educate and inspire with stories of entrepreneurs' journey, and we also explore their why. You will learn from successes and failures to be the best version of yourself. Today we have Matt Swalley, who is the co-founder and chief business officer at Omneky. Hello, Matt. How are you today?
Doing well, Mark. Thank you so much for having me on Absolute Business Mindset.
Absolute pleasure. I'm really excited to talk to you about. You've had some corporate experience, you've had some entrepreneur experience, as well as some earlier stuff as well. There's going to be some really interesting bits I'm sure that we're going to go into today. So thank you, firstly, for joining me today. The podcast is called Absolute Business Mindset. My first question always is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
I believe a business mindset is figuring out a way to provide value to others that others are not capturing. So really differentiating and constantly figuring out how can I bring more value to a specific customer set out there, and then constantly improving efficiencies and then figuring out how to grow it.
So value does come up a lot when I ask this question. It's a very interesting sort of touch point for me. So this is why I started with the same question, because the actual idea of what a business is and what you've defined it as is being able to add value that is different than what the market says. Mindset wise, what for you characterizes that sort of mindset that means that you can be successful in business?
With my current role as chief business officer, there's two different ways you got to look at a company, really. There's product and distribution. So there's always two levers you're having to pull, right? Is improving the product to meet the market. We meet with hundreds and thousands of customers in the couple of years I've been here. So you're constantly listening and then building the product. And the second one, you could have a great product, but if you don't have distribution down effectively and bring in the right type of customer to you, you're not going to be successful. So really it's two sides to the business. And of course, there's many other attributes like financials, growth, things like that. But those two levers constantly have to be pulling. And that's the business mindset, in my opinion.
Brilliant. Before we get into the other questions, what is actually a chief business officer for you? What do you do?
At a startup, I do a lot of different things. So everything revenue generating, from sales to our customer success team to helping raise money with venture capital to finding, even helping with product. I'm involved in really everything, but really revenue generating is my key responsibility. We have a sales team of about 4 on the business side and a customer success team of about 6 on the other side.
Amazing. And we'll come into that a lot about what the role is further as we go through the conversation, we come to Omneky. So let's just park that for now. We will definitely come back to it. So what I want you to explain to me now is tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
Sure. So both my parents were actually in business. When we talk about business mindset, I went to Indiana University in the Midwest, USA. So great business school. Both my parents went there. My dad was always in sales. So growing up, what really moved on to me was he's really humble and follows through with what he says he's going to do 100% of the time. And that's something I've always, with high integrity. So that's something I've always tried to carry on is like, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's such a low bar, but in success, if you follow that process, it's the very bare minimum to success. And it's something I always try to do. Things can change. That's okay. You can change your mind on things, but as long as you set the expectations, things change and let people know and are proactive in communication, then follow through has always been my base to success. I got that from my dad. And really the other thing is, Mark, is he always remembers people years later. It used to drive me crazy as a young person, but you're with him and he'll remember people from 10 years before and go up and have a conversation with them, like completely nonchalant. So that's something I really try to carry on as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So as your parents were both in business, was the expectation that you would always, whether it was a corporate role or set your own business up, was there an expectation of that?
No, there was no expectations. They always have tried to get me to do whatever I want to do. That was just something, I guess I'm an extrovert and I went to business school. And then my early years, my first job out of school, I worked for a family owned and operated company out of South Bend, Indiana, but I had the Chicago city territory. So I was making like thousands and thousands of cold calls, just getting knocked down every single day. Had no clue how to talk to customers, but I got so much iteration on it. And that really set the tone. I also went through this thing called Sandler training. You're digging some stuff out of here that I haven't talked about in a while. So Sandler is this sales training. It's like where you're listening and asking questions 80% of the time, 20% of the time you're talking. You never want to spill your candy in the lobby, like share your pricing too early, all these things. David Zeiker invested so much in this training during my first 2 years. It really was a great beginning to my career, getting that kind of training at a small business that then I got a bunch more at AT&T. I joined a leadership development program. I could talk a little bit more about that, but that was really the foundation, was that Sandler training and running a territory all on my own right out of college, where I was cold calling 50 to 100 businesses a day, door knocking in the old days, handing out business cards and then picking up the phone was all business generation. So
do you think, one of my favorite questions that I often try and ask you if the experience suits is, do you think that doing sales in your early career is key to being able to build a business? Because I get a lot of people that have gone through some sort of sales training, especially in entrepreneurs, because you need to be able to sell to be able to build a business. Do you think it's the key component?
I don't know if it's the key component. There's lots of skills, but so I came from a large company after that. I spent 13 years at AT&T, joined the startup world 2 years ago. Our founder, Hikari Senju, is a Harvard computer science grad. He is constantly selling. He sold his first business, founded Omneky in 2018. But you're right, Mark, that is the exact skill. He is constantly selling Omneky every single step of the way. And I think really there's 2 things you get from sales. One is you get knocked down a ton. You learn how to handle that, really challenging time when you're making all these calls. Then all of a sudden on meeting 100 or call 100, you're closing a sale on your worst day. But if you just keep chipping away at it, you learn to do that. And the second thing is with entrepreneurship, you're constantly selling. So you're right. Yes, it really does help you understand how to talk to people, ask questions, pull out some of the pain points, the questions you ask on these podcasts. It does.
It's really interesting you say about asking questions, because there still is a sort of misinterpretation of sales that it's all about talking to your potential clients about features and pricing and things like that, where actually the art form of being able to ask a really good question to get to their pain point or what's difficult for them is actually the greatest skill. Why do you think people have that sort of misinterpretation of sales?
They never were really trained to understand the right way, right? So you ask the questions, and like you said, you can help really understand. If you put yourself in that business's shoes and try to figure out, what is really the challenge that is so painful keeping that owner or business up at night, and you can figure out a way that your solution fits that need and makes their job easier. And the only way is by asking questions. If you go directly into a sales pitch, you don't know what their needs are completely. You don't know which areas of your business are even like the focal point that can help their business. And people, by the way, the second part is people like talking. So if you can get customers talking and understanding them, everyone wants to get a chance to speak and tell you things that are going on, right? So it's just natural human interaction.
How do you create rapport with potential clients?
I see this, it's a little different in Zoom. So back in my early years when we were going face-to-face for every single meeting, I think some of that was more natural. I really do. With Zoom, sales is changing to being much more transactional. Like you'll have 8 to 10 meetings in a day. It used to take 3 to 4 max for a sales team. And for me, it's easier because I've lived all over. Like there's a lot of experiences you do as you grow old. Like you have 2 kids and a family, and I've lived in Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, Southern California, all these major cities. And like the second you talk to someone in that they have some sort of, commonality with you, which many of them do at this point, it comes a lot more natural. But for the younger team members, it's definitely more challenging. And you really have to just try to have one of the discussions I have with our younger team members is you really have to try to break that barrier down and get comfortable, just asking questions on things that, you weren't comfortable on.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of your first roles after you finished working with the family business was that you took on as a treasurer for iTalk Toastmasters in Dallas. So I'm assuming that's Toastmasters as in the speaking group.
That's right, Mark. Public speaking has always been a thing and it used to be pretty scary to me sometimes. And that was one of the things we talked about earlier is like getting uncomfortable. I actually did Toastmasters when I was AT&T. So AT&T had 240,000 employees at the time. I was at headquarters. I had transitioned from leading a sales team and organization into a chief of staff role where I was supporting the senior officer that ran our multinational corporation relationships. Like we had a big team in the UK. And during this time, I was really trying to time block and improve skills like public speaking, financials. I was getting my MBA as well at the time. So Toastmasters was a weekly meeting you did at lunchtime. So you just step down in this meeting room. There's about 30 people. You got to do a lot of presentations. I was improvising presentations on a weekly basis, getting my MBA at the same time. But Toastmasters is such a great program for a low cost for anyone. And then I was treasurer of it. So I handled all the finances, got into some public speaking competitions. But for anyone that's uncomfortable and has that, even getting on podcasts, if you're uncomfortable with it, Toastmasters is such a way to get started at a very low cost and just get uncomfortable. And everyone's really supportive. That's the big difference with Toastmasters. There's no competition. Like you're just there to get comfortable with people and learn how to present in a better way.
So it's a bit of an unfair question, but if there was one thing that you took from Toastmasters and public speaking, what's been that key thing that makes you comfortable speaking on a podcast about you and your business, speaking to audiences? What's that? Or maybe a few things. What are those key things that's really propelled yourself as a public speaker?
I always outline a couple of talking points before every single time I get to speak. Even like our sales meetings, I do the same thing. I prepare for the customer, what the customer does, but a couple of simple talking points with bullets and a strong opening and a strong closing, and then just continue iteration. Like Omneky, I have given the value prop thousands and thousands of times at this point. So it's literally second nature. So the more you get out there and just start doing it, the more comfortable it's going to be. And then you're going to start doing things that you that were completely uncomfortable a year ago. It's just chipping away at it. One of the things I like to look at it is like you just chip it away at daily. There's no immediate gratification out there. That's the sad thing about today is everyone wants immediate gratification, but nothing in life has been easy, Mark. I don't know. I don't know if you feel that way. It's like you chip away at it.
Yeah.
And you hope to get lucky and something goes easy at some point, but it really never is that easy.
It's ironic. You use Toastmasters. I actually use my podcast channel as a place to be able to really be able to. So I started it to improve my public speaking because I wanted to, it sounds very cliched, but find my voice. And I needed to sit down and talk to, originally it was just solo stuff. So it was me talking to a microphone and a camera, but developed into interviewing people and talking to people about their businesses. And that all started as I was in corporate for 14 years. And that started a few years ago because I wanted to get better at it. I needed to get better at it and be able to assimilate information and be able to present it to someone quickly. Where I was previously, when I was doing it, I was agonizing over everything and every gesture, every thought process, everything I wanted to explain. We're actually doing the podcast and doing interviews, but also the solo stuff at the start was just getting myself being able to prepare quickly and efficiently and then be able to stand up, sit down, talk to people in a microphone. So I see there's definitely correlations between your experience and mine.
And you've done 400 of them now. Was it challenging the first couple?
Oh God, you should hear episode 1. It's awful. It really is awful. Editing's not very good. It was all done with low, like I don't spend a lot of money on equipment, but it was pretty low stuff that I was doing. There is definitely a massive transition from episode 1 up to where we are today. But as you say, it's been a learning experience for me. And I've learned, I now can, when I'm in my businesses, I can pitch to clients, I can go and network, I can go and interview people, I can go and speak to people, and I feel a lot more comfortable in my own skin to be able to do that. And that started from an exercise of, I'm just going to click record and talk into a microphone. And that's how I started.
Yeah. Interesting fact. I wanted to start a podcast back, how many years ago was it now? 5 years ago, I think, called The Zip. Chipping away at success with building daily habits, like joining Toastmasters, things like that.
Right.
I even filmed the beginning of it. Like I did a couple of episodes, outlined a script, and I was given some bad advice that at the time someone didn't understand what it is to do a podcast. And they told me one of my mentors was kind of like, yeah, I think it's a little bit too basic to do it, to be putting yourself out there like that. But the key is I would do that completely differently and would have just tried it out and then learn from it.
Absolutely. It's been a massive journey for me and a massive development curve of being able to think and be able to structure because I said to you before we start, I spent an hour on every guest just because I really want to get underneath the skin and in this conversation have something meaningful rather than just talking about your business, which it would be the easy thing to do and would take little prep. It'd be 5 questions and we could just riff it from what your business is doing, who you're marketing, who's your avatar. And all those things are really interesting. Don't get me wrong. I'm fascinated by that. But the actual evolution of the podcast has been an interesting journey as well. But this conversation is about you, Matt, not about me. So let's move on to AT&T. So you were there for 12 years. You said earlier on that you were part of the management, like the talent growth side. So what did you do initially in AT&T? And I just want to get to understand why you were there for so long and what you enjoyed so much about it.
It was a blast for many years. I was in Chicago working for the small business, another fact of kind of one of those transition periods that shot me in the corporate path is my uncle was he was an AT&T employee, did really well. He's an amazing leader and someone I really look up to. He was chief marketing officer, ran supply chain for some of the biggest deals AT&T did for the mobile carrier side. And he was actually chief strategy officer for many years, but seeing his success and how driven in his initiative was really instrumental in taking that leap to AT&T. And I joined the sales leadership development program at the time, which was in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 2009. That was my early days. And this was such an amazing, strenuous training program, Mark, for this. So I had done that other job for about 18 months where I had a lot of sales experience going like cold calling. And this was my first really tech job. And this was like an all-day training program. Had to be in the office by 7:30 a.m. We didn't leave till 5:30 p.m. We're put through strenuous training, suit and tie every day, shave. You have to have, I got sent home at one point for, having not shaving in the morning, things like that. It was wild. Every day at noon, they would call everyone into a room and they would have you public speak, just like I'm talking about at Toastmasters,
Wow.
where they'd give your AT&T value prop for 5 minutes. So then you had to get up and give you had to be ready to do it, value prop in front of about, I'd say it was 100 people in that room. It was a constant rotation of 10 new development people every month. So you had 6 cohorts in there at one time. So more than that, it was more than 60. But it was a great training program where you got experience in the early days of mobility applications like GPS tracking, push to talk, all these other like telecom. And then the last day of that training program, they're like, these jobs opened up across the US. Are you going to take it? Yes or no? And you had no idea where you were going to live. And Newport Beach, California opened up. And I took that job. I had never been to California. I packed up my car and I drove from Atlanta to Southern California, where I lived my first time close to the beach and my first outside sales job, AT&T. And then I had about 7 different roles in Southern California, leading teams across the whole southern half of California, all the way up to the Central Coast, down to close to, really far south, and led 5 different sales teams over a period of a couple of years. And then I made that jump to headquarters. I was like, all the decisions are made at headquarters in Dallas. I'm going to go pursue this. So I relocated to Dallas headquarters with my wife and led some sales teams and organizations, and then became a chief of staff role, which was like that first executive role type of role where you get big picture P&L experience, teams all over the world. So you're dealing with a lot of different regulations and things like that, and getting to really be that second person to a senior officer, helping write talking points. And just like I said before, a speaking engagement, you write your talking points. I did lots of that. And then my last thing I wanted to share, Mark, is I got my MBA during that. My second major eureka moment at AT&T was like, every decision is made financially. So like when revenue is not growing as fast as you want to, every decision is made from a standpoint of improving efficiency. So I was like, I need to get corporate strategy experience, understand how financial analysis looks, how to figure out go-to-market, figure out where we want to invest so I can start making those decisions. So I made that goal. I got into corporate strategy after my MBA, and then spent 2 years there doing a whole lot of different project spins, from board of directors materials to looking into technology companies. What's that next wave of tech that you can catch that could be multi-billion-dollar function? And that's what led me to Omneky. I started getting really excited about tech startups and looking at companies that AT&T could potentially go, invest in. Omneky wasn't one, for example, but AI-powered advertising was what Hikari was building. And I met him, and it was just fate that I connected with him. He brought me over as full-time employee number 3. He had another co-founder named Aaron Surloff, who had been with the company for about a year before that. But Hikari had been running pretty much all the functions, and I took over all the business side of it for the most part.
All right, I've got one question before we go deep into Omneky. Yeah. I just want, something that struck me from this last couple of minutes you've been talking about is the number of different cities in the US that you've worked in. Maybe there's people listening to this podcast who either have opportunities to work in another city, another country. What's your sort of advice for someone who's thinking about moving to another location, another city, another country? What's that sort of advice you'd like to give them?
Yeah, I moved probably, 15 times over 18 years. It's so valuable, especially when I worked from all these different offices too, where I had full new teams, where I got comfortable just going into any situation and learning how to interact, start from day one, building those relationships, managing tons of different teams. I would say just take the leap and try it out, and you can always move if you don't like where you are. And the second thing is just try to find, when you move to a new place, you can I can be comfortable anywhere. They all have different benefits, but make sure you have some of the main things you have around you. That's it. If you have a gym,
Right.
if you like going to the gym, make sure you have a gym that fits your needs around you.
Yeah.
If you miss out on some of the basic things, that's the only challenge. But besides that, they all have their benefits. Like Southern California, getting in the ocean every morning. Oh my gosh, that was one of my favorite things. Cold
Amazing.
water. Like I miss
Yeah.
that. And then Dallas, Texas has a completely different type of mentality than Southern California. Southern California has hardworking, but you also have this really good lifestyle, like where, people value going in surfing and things like that. Then you move to Dallas, it's all straight up business.
It's really interesting you say that because one of my businesses is real estate, is property. And when you're talking to investors or you're even for yourself moving to a property, a piece of advice that was given to me was find when you're looking at like the kitchen or the bathroom or the bedrooms, whatever, gardens, pool, whatever it is, find a 10 out of 10, something in that house that makes it a 10 out of 10, because that is probably going to be more important than having 7 across the board. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything's good. You're like, yeah, but I don't have that kitchen that has the aisle and you can sit at the table and eat your breakfast, or doesn't have the swimming pool or whatever it is, the sauna or whatever that is. Would you agree with that? You need a 10 out of 10 to move to another city or find that 10 out of 10 for you in each city?
Yeah, but you don't know. Sometimes you don't know what that 10 out of 10 is before you live in a new city. Like you have no clue what it's going to be like living somewhere, especially I moved to a couple places, never being there, bought houses I never have seen.
Right.
I've only bought 2 houses, but both of them one was made in a 2-hour one time looking at it, and the second was made without seeing it. So I agree that 10 out of 10 is important, but a lot of times you won't understand until you're there what your 10 out of 10 is. Like going in the ocean, for example, cold water, like that stress reliever was like something I absolutely loved. I would have never known how much I loved getting in the ocean. And
yeah, sounds amazing. Amazing. Okay. So you've touched on why you moved to Omneky, that the founder came to you and talked about how you should move to the company. But just before we go into the actual nuts and bolts of the business and what it is, and I want you to tell me exactly what it is. You've obviously moved cities, you've moved jobs, you've moved from a corporate environment to a startup. But what's your experience of mental health has been for you through these different chapters of your life?
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're an online business owner and you want to learn what's working right now to generate leads, grow your following, and get paying clients and customers, then be sure to check out the Digital Trailblazer podcast. Each week, we feature online business owners just like you who are launching and scaling their businesses, and we reveal exactly what they're doing to rise above the competition to build a successful, profitable online business. And what's really unique about the Digital Trailblazer podcast is that you're going to learn these strategies directly from the business owners who are putting them into action and getting results. So head over to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, or just head over to digitaltrailblazer.com for links to all of our episodes.
Yeah, that's a hard question, Mark. Mental health is such an important aspect of everyone's lives right now. You have no idea how a lot of people are feeling. So it's really a challenge, I'd say. I have really worked hard on trying to never get too high and too low, no matter what, because those high and lows can really make it difficult. But for me personally, it's that constant thing of trying to chip away. What helps me is, number one, I focus on my family and my job. That's my whole life right now. So I think I read something that you can only have 2 areas of focus. In there, 4 they listed, it was family, work, community, and one other, but only 2 of those you can be good at one time. So right now, 100% mine is Omneky and my family. And so the second thing is with mental health, I try to constantly improve on certain different areas of my life that help me just keep an even keel. Just like I was saying, learn new skills when things get tough. As long as you're constantly learning, you feel like you're in a great place. But the second thing is too, Mark, is exercise for mental health is an absolute crucial. The second I stop exercising, which there's lots of periods of time, we have a 5-month-old, it's just a complete detractor. So anything you can do to get in a cold pool or an ocean, or go, work out and get 30 minutes a quick 30-minute workout in is an absolute life changer that isn't necessary for myself and my family.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell me about Omneky. So I believe it's an AI-driven ad tech platform, but why don't you tell me what it does? What we know what you do in it, but what the actual platform does.
Sure. So Omneky is an artificial intelligence powered advertising platform that was really like one of the first companies, the first company in generative AI advertising. So 2018.
We're just having a quick break from the episode today. Thank you so much for joining me today. What I want you to do is, can you do one thing for me? Can you go and text one of your friends a link to the show, whether it's on Apple or Spotify or any other of the podcast providers, and text a friend of yours that you love this show and they should be listening to it. It's a simple request, and I really would appreciate if all you do is give that text to a friend, family member, or colleague. And lastly, if you do want to see more information about the podcast, go to absolutebusinessmindset.com. Right, back to the interview.
Hikari thought of this idea, this vision. He had been running growth after he sold his education technology startup and realized like there's this huge challenge of making growth available for any small business or mid-market size company. And he had a Harvard computer science background, knew data and analytics would be the key to unlocking growth. And so Omneky was founded at that time. 2020 was the first time we had substantial amount of customers, and we've constantly been growing. But Omneky uses data and analytics, so real-time performance data from Meta, Google, TikTok, LinkedIn, anywhere your customers could be at, and uses a tool called computer vision, which is the ability to look at something and quantify what's in it. What are the colors? What are the value props? What are the length of the video? It can really scan anything immediately and even give a description of what it is. And with that, plus performance data, you can use those attributes to generate better digital ads. And we talk about pain. The biggest pain point out there right now is creative is now the major lever for distribution. There is GDPR, California Protection Act. There's tons of regulation around targeting, meaning you can't get really granular on who you want to see something. So now those platforms recognize what's in an ad and they know what you like. So Mark, I don't know what I didn't get a chance to ask you, but if you're a golf fan, it's going to start to serve you stuff that has golf in it. And so what Omneky does is we look at a customer's ideal customer profiles, what verticals they're in, and look at the data. And then we generate tons of creative with a click of a button, very quick turnaround. And it's becoming, you have to have creative that's ads that are meaningful and relevant. So short time period, the time period keeps decreasing for what personalization means. And with the current technology and how fast it's moving, it is available today. And so Omneky uses that data plus generative AI for images, copy, creative briefings. It moves really fast and makes growth so easy as clicking approve for customers.
So content is important. The actual ads are your content versions. And so I've been interested the development of AI. So I've been shared with some friends and colleagues. So obviously everyone now knows about ChatGPT. Everyone knows that. Some people know about Midjourney, which is the thing where you can create images from descriptions. And I don't know what the technology is. You may or may not know that I've recently seen on TikTok. I've been a little bit playing around with TikTok and seen that there's now songs that have, so what your favorite song being sung by a different artist, which has just been really fun to see. Those types of AI are infiltrating, we're accepting it and we're seeing the benefits of it. Where do you see when it comes to business side? Where do you see that sort of taking us in the future?
Oh, it's moving so fast. It's crazy. It's such an exciting industry to be in. Every day, our team is testing all those tools you just mentioned, Mark. So there's something called an LM, a large language model. And there's all these different open source tools out there right now. And a lot of those things that you've seen, like synthesizing an artist's voice. By the way, one of those artists actually agreed to it and started taking royalties on it. So some of them have said, no, don't do it. And other ones haven't embraced it and said, I'll take a royalty. You can do it.
Right.
But you piece together all these tools right now, and that's what you're seeing there. Oh, did you see the beer commercial?
No.
Oh, I'll have to share that with you. It is wild. It is a bunch of these different tools like Midjourney, and someone made a commercial and it looks like aliens looking down at humans and trying to like decipher what a good time is, because it's like really good and hilarious, but it's not perfect. The faces are distorted and stuff. And so images are getting really good right now. Videos moving faster. But what I believe right now, and I know already, is like every company needs to become an AI company right now, because there's all these tasks and different job elements that can be automated. And it wouldn't eliminate jobs unless if you learn how to use these tools, because you become 10 times more efficient. You can really ask these tools to do anything for you that used to would have taken a lot more money to go ask a resource, finance, accounting.
Did you know something, Matt? I always think this back. So I'm 43 years old. I remember my first sort of jobs, like doing summer work at your offices and things like that. So I was like 97, 98, 99. And I remember going into companies and having an IT department who looked after the software and the hardware. Look, we still, as I said, I worked in corporate for 14 years. So you still have a sort of technical department, but the fact that most tools are now across all different, whether you're in finance, HR, operations, whatever it is, you're less divided. Like, technology is not a division of labor now. Technology is immersed in all business, in all areas. So I think it's absolutely fascinating that there's less IT departments and now it's just impacting everything.
Yeah, the barriers to entry for being a technologist now have lowered with technology. So before you had to completely have a computer science degree, that is still the most valuable, one of the most valuable things. But now people without a computer science degree can go use these tools like AutoGPT and figure out how to go get these daisy chain large language models to go research a customer, figure out who the competitors are, what are the pricing points, what are some of their advertising strategies. This is something you can get a computer to do right now. And it's amazing and scary how fast it's moving.
So you say scary. It's interesting you say scary, because one of the questions that I had was, Elon Musk has recently come out and done interviews saying that he's taken a step out of AI and that it now needs regulation because we need to regulate before it becomes a problem. Now, obviously, you're in the AI arena, but do you think we should be scared or excited about AI, or maybe both?
I think we have to embrace it. And Elon's got a couple of stances there with different business opportunities he's got going as well, because I think he was an early investor in OpenAI and now he's not really involved. So
he's a step back. Yeah, he
took a step back and he's trying to create some other businesses that are semi-competitive, I think. But I think you have to embrace it. I do think like what is possible right now is blowing the roof off right now. Like I'm starting to look at the world completely different using these tools every day and getting to work with the smart AI leaders we have in our team, our CEO, and every single person is becoming a technologist. Innovation is just going to go through the roof. And I just start to wonder, like, what are the next possibilities? They read someone's brain. They had people listen to a podcast and hooked up to a brain like sensor, and they were able to actually realize what the person was thinking right now with AI.
Wow.
So that gets to the point so much so where you could be wearing a device and whatever you're thinking of is going to start to show up. Instead of having to predict what you're going to have, it's going to be so real time that it's going to know what Mark or one of your audience members likes, and it's going to start to show you what that is, or even be able to create it or create an image. Then let's just send that to a 3D printer. All right, you got a product. You just thought of a business in 2 seconds. Okay, how do I go to market with that product? I'm going to ask ChatGPT, give me an idea of how to go to market for this specific product. All of a sudden you have a 10-step process of how to go file an incorporation.
Who is your target market for your business?
Yeah, so we focus on really mid-market businesses right now. So anyone with 5 to 250 million in revenue that are software as a service, e-commerce, fintech, health and wellness, internet-based companies. And we're a direct plug into their team. A lot of times they have a lean creative team and they are unable to create digital ads that are for all their customers across 4 different things. Let's see, there's audiences, ideal customer profiles and verticals. There's markets, geographies and languages, multilingual, national corporations have challenges with that, products and services. If you have a whole lot of products or a whole lot of services, and finally platforms, there's different sizes, dimensions. TikTok needs UGC, things like that. Omneky solves that entire creative problem.
Do you think technology using AI will ever completely overpower more traditional means of marketing, networking, billboards, publishing, articles, those things like that? Do you think it will make those types of marketing completely obsolete?
I think there's always going to be a human element for a while, because there has to be a curator that helps, review it. Omneky has one on the Omneky side and on the customer side in still directing. But I think Omneky was built for AI to disrupt traditional advertising. So it's going to continually become more and more automated. There's a lot of things Omneky's doing with the human in the loop to make sure things are reviewed before things go live on both sides. And also you have to building in ethical AI and safety, processes into the platform. So there's a lot of still human areas, but it's going to be disrupted by AI.
Yeah, I agree. I think still, so for example, using ChatGPT for content, I sometimes use it for content on my LinkedIn profile, but I will always header it with my words and slightly tweak it maybe just to make it feel a bit more like my words rather than an automatic generated. And I think that still, and that human element, I still think is critical for AI. Now, there's lots of people saying that role will be obsolete as well, but I think it still needs a human element to make it connecting with people. I think that's what I'm not convinced enough at the moment, although I'm open to be persuaded, but I still think that human element is something that AI isn't able to perfect at the moment. Maybe it will.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. One of the biggest technology shifts too is a lot of people are building in the open right now, and they're sharing how to do these prompts the right way. I know one way, Mark, is it's still going to need your input, but you can go train it on your writing style.
Right.
You can go upload 10 of your writing samples, or maybe a podcast soon, and say, oh, write it like Mark wrote this.
Right.
And it's going to continue to get better and better. These are the type of technology shifts that are improving day over day. And I can't imagine if we talked in 6 months from now, what it's going to be different from today.
Yeah, absolutely. Things are moving so fast. But one of the things that are going to be critical and always have been critical within technology is data. Yes. So you were talking about data analytics. So how do you store the data? How do you process the data? How do you interpret the data? You must have such a, like you say, you've got Meta and you've got all the other people that are collecting the data for you. How the hell do you process all of that to make something meaningful?
Advertising data is got the most data across any area of the business, but our data is anonymized data. So you run all these different ads, right? So there's different campaigns, different target audiences, all these different attributes. So you can get really granular on what area you want to analyze. And then what you can do is look across all those creatives with computer vision element of where you're able to quantify what is in those ads, what are the value props for each individual click or sale or impression. You have to look at it through all these different lenses because they tell a different story. You can run this thing called regression analysis that looks across all the data, and then you can start to pinpoint things that are commonalities across the results. And that's what you use as an input to future creative. And what Omneky really brings value to is omni platform. So we look across all your channels. All these platforms are walled gardens. So if you're just looking at data within one platform, you're not getting a holistic view. If you look across all the platforms in a single place, like our platform does, you can go say, oh, wow, Google, we're seeing this great thing on YouTube. That's going to work great for an Instagram story. So you can go, cross-pollinate across the same customer's data.
And do you repurpose for content for LinkedIn sponsorship, for Instagram promotions, like Facebook promoted content? So you said you look across the board of information. How do you then decipher from one piece of content which bit is a Instagram post, which is potentially even advertising on TV? How do you cut across to ring fence for the different platforms?
There's two different sides to it that we're getting into. So first is video still makes up about 60-70% of ad creatives out there right now. So you can see within Facebook stories, for example, what's the optimal length of the video? What's the hook rate of people watching it? What's the time they clicked? And those can be used for YouTube. Like we have a bunch of 100 different customers where we know which platforms and what type of content work based on the data. And then that's how you can go test a new one. And then the other thing to note, Mark, is you want to leave like 20% of your budget, advertising budget, for testing purposes. So this is a small budget that you're testing lots of creative concepts. You're finding the winners and then dropping those into higher budget campaigns when you scale. But you have to constantly be testing those creatives, and Omneky delivers them daily or weekly of new creatives. So it's a constant refresh of creative. I think the longest shelf life for an ad these days is supposed to be like 6 weeks. Some people run them longer for really strong ads, but it's a constant refresh needed now.
Yeah, and testing, marketing and advertising is all about testing to see which works and then double down on it, the stuff that works, and then you should see results. One of my strategies for any marketing for my businesses is to test, try it, see different times, different pieces of content, different ways of being able to say a message, and then if one bit works. So, for example, everyone tells when you're looking at LinkedIn that you should post between 8:30 and 9 a.m. in your local, because that's the time when people are commuting or just about to go to work and they're open to have a quick flick through or scroll down on LinkedIn. So there's lots of these sorts of trigger points. I'm assuming that your advertising is interpreting all that data and then making suggestions for your clients to do that.
That's exactly right. Whatever data we can pull in from the platforms, we're analyzing that and then optimizing in real time new creatives.
This has been absolutely fascinating. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the show. I ask the same 6 questions to all my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. And these are completely unrehearsed. They're completely off the cuff. But first question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
Joining Omneky. Taking the leap to start up and really, following that growth trajectory with a company and joining, Hikari and Aaron here.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the things that I found from moving from corporate to startups is corporate, you needed buy-in from 5 or 6, 7 different places to be able to make a strategic change.
Yeah.
Where in a startup, there's a lot more agility. There's a lot more ability to be able to change and pivot on what you're doing. Is that a shared experience?
Yeah, immediate pivot. You can pivot so quickly, test things every single day, whatever the priorities are, you're testing new things. And that would have taken us 6 months to a year. We've integrated new product offerings over a period of 2 days before at a startup where it's fully launched with a customer. It would have taken like 6 months at a large company.
100%. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I'm going to go back to your question earlier on mental health and stability, and it's never get too high or too low. Try to keep that even keel no matter what it is. I try to take that with me every day.
Great advice. Who's helped you most in your career?
I'd say the 2 people are, I'm going to name 2. Yeah, my dad and then my uncle from AT&T. And then we have another great connection from AT&T that joined Omneky as an investor named John Donovan. So he invested in Omneky and helped us lead our last round from the AT&T relationship.
Amazing. And before we carry on, just as a segue, you mentioned this right at the start, and I've just remembered it now. The whole role of fundraising for a business. Now, obviously, can be quite complicated if you're getting VC funding, et cetera. So for you as trying to find fundraising, is there if people are listening here and they're like, oh, I'd really like to grow my business fast, maybe I need to raise funds from VC or whatever, what advice would you give someone that was looking to do that?
Oh, it's a process and it can take a while. So start building those relationships across all the major venture capital and figuring out your product market fit ASAP. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Right, back to our questions, our 6 questions. Tell me about a regret that you have.
I don't have it. Everything I look at as a learning experience. I don't have a regret, Mark, on this. I always learn from it. There have been a lot of challenging times, but they all are learning and you become stronger after it. So
fair enough. What are you most proud of?
My family and my 2 daughters, and yeah, teaching them and getting to spend time and try to teach them those values that I was taught as a little one.
How old are they?
4 and 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a
One's
7
really
and,
little.
I've got a 7 and a 9-year-old, and it's 2 girls as well. And it's a really interesting sharing with children that have technology from day one, or not say day one, you know what I mean? But they have technology right from the start. And you do sound old when you're like, I didn't get my first mobile till I was 18 years old and things like that. But trying to instill the values, the ethics, the work ethic, the sort of things that are really the values which are so important. I think that's the thing that I'm finding challenging at some stages, but equally really rewarding when you see like working hard and things like that. You have to work hard, whether you're in a corporate or a startup. There's no missing. Like we can all have this idea of work-life balance, which does happen in some cases, but being able to have that work ethic, I think, is so important.
Startups don't feel like work, though.
No,
So
I 100% agree with you on that. I 100% agree with that. It feels a lot more fun than the corporate environment. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy, there's two different ways. Is when someone looks back at what Mark or someone else has accomplished, that's your legacy. And the second one is legacy products, so old products. We always labeled everything legacy at one of my old jobs that for the old products that were going to be sunset.
Okay. And lastly, before we finish, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find us at www.omneky, omneky.com. Feel free to schedule a demo and put in the code. You heard it on the Absolute Business Mindset. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Matt Swalley on LinkedIn, or send me an email at matt@omneky.com.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Matt. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you, everything from corporate to technology to startup. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Mark. It was a blast. Bye.